So about those 20,000 COVID-19 tests the governor told us we were getting.
We are expecting testing capacity to ramp up substantially in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, so we're not getting those anymore. And don't even try to ask about it.
Next question, please. Next question.
But good news, though, more PPE is on the way to hospitals in the Northwest. Well, they were on the way until the feds seized them. And Governor Brown may release prisoners to slow the spread of COVID-19 behind bars. So why did hundreds of inmates just learn their sentences are extended? Here's the story.
And welcome to The Story. I am Dan Haggerty. Also today, Governor Brown canceled in-person classes for the rest of the school year. So I want to take a quick minute and talk to Oregon's high school seniors. And I say seniors plural because I think we probably have at least 2 watching right now, maybe 3. So anyway, my dad has taught high school for like 40 years. He was my teacher. He was actually my football coach too. So high school was like a really big deal to me. I was the oldest kid in my family. I was the first to graduate. So for everybody, senior prom, graduation, end of the year parties, the whole family comes into town, and it just breaks my heart that none of you get to do that. And frankly, it's not fair. And one day, I promise this won't seem as devastating as it does right now, but right now, it's pretty devastating. And I don't want you to brush it off like it isn't, because, you deserve all of those things that I just listed. And your parents do too. You'll figure out how hard that part of it is down the line. But please, if you can, find ways to celebrate what you've accomplished. Be creative. Cherish how unique you are. I graduated in the year 2000. That was like Y2K and all that stuff. And people from my class from that year, we had this weird connection because of the significance of that year, 2000, the millennium. We got nothing, nothing on you guys. First of all, you're the class of 2020, so that's also a pretty cool number. But you are going to carry this bizarre little moment in history with you, I think, a little differently than the rest of us. And unlike most people, it's going to be a part of you forever. So make sure when you look back, you're proud of the way you handled it. You're a special class, and you'll get through this. All right, let's get into our big story tonight. It's not about graduation or about canceled classes. It's about something that Governor Brown said a couple of weeks ago and something that she didn't quite say today. Let's start with what she said back on March 18th.
We are expecting testing capacity to ramp up substantially in the next 3 weeks.
Okay, well, it's exactly 3 weeks from when Governor Brown said that, obviously talking about COVID-19 testing. Now, at the time, we were all wondering why Oregon was so far behind when it came to testing, and we had been pressing her and her office pretty hard for answers. So in that same briefing, she told us that the state of Oregon partnered with a private company called Quest Diagnostics to secure 20,000 COVID-19 tests, and that 5,000 of them were expected to be available within days. Well, over the next week, we kept pressing to try and find out when those tests would actually be here, but they were never able to give us a specific date. Eventually, the Oregon Health Authority told us that Quest had started processing some of those tests at a lab out of the state. But again, we didn't really have any hard numbers until today. And I want to give a shout out to the Oregonian for filing a public records request to get the order that OHA made through Quest. We got a copy of it. You're looking at it here. We learned some pretty interesting things, like the price of the test, for instance. They're $69 a piece. We also learned that the state never actually ordered 20,000 of them. They only ordered 10,000 of them. Another interesting thing, the agreement was dated April 1st, 2 weeks after the governor's initial promise of the 20,000 tests. All right. Look, this isn't a gotcha moment right here. Mistakes happen. I mean, even we make mistakes here sometimes. And when we do our very best to own up to them, to correct the record, and work hard to do better the next day. So today, after the governor's announcement about schools being canceled, a reporter asked about the tests and the miscommunication, we'll call it.
Why did you say that we'll have 20,000 test kits here in Oregon with a new contract signed, if in reality there was no such contract signed?
Look, what I would say to Oregonians is things are rapidly evolving, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, and we're providing as much information as we can as quickly as possible. In terms of testing generally, we know that we have inadequate testing in the state of Oregon.
To follow up, though, real quick, the question is and remains, when you realized that it wasn't going to be 20,000 but 10,000 instead, why not tell the people of Oregon that that was actually the case and that the numbers were incorrect back on March 18th when you announced 20,000 tests coming to Oregon?
Our agency was able to secure a price agreement with Quest, a commercial carrier, commercial company that can provide testing. We know that there are new equipment on board, there are new testing becoming available, and we are going to continue to work that make that available to Oregonians.
Governor, is it possible to get an answer to that follow-up question?
Next question, please. Next question.
Okay, well, look, seems pretty clear to me that neither the governor nor her team really wanted to get into it, and I can't blame them because it sounds like they either messed up, jumped the gun, or both. But look, that's just my opinion. If you want purely facts here are the facts. We still don't have the tests that we were promised. As of today, Oregon has tested more than 24,000 people, while our neighbors to the north in Washington have tested nearly 88,000. Hopefully, we can catch up, and soon.
Oregon is kind of like Washington's little brother or sister, you could say. Seems like we like to follow their lead on a lot of things, like legalizing marijuana. But we have been known to step up first to the plate with stuff like mail-in voting. And we've seen the same back and forth when it comes to handling this pandemic. So how did we get here? COVID-19 hit Washington earlier and much harder than Oregon. So on March 12th, Governor Jay Inslee decided to close all schools in the Seattle area for 6 weeks. That same evening, Oregon went a step further and closed all schools statewide through the end of March. The next day, Washington did the same thing. Then came the restaurants. Governor Inslee shut down all dine-in service on March 15th. The next day, Governor Kate Brown did the same thing in Oregon. Next, the stay-home orders. Now, Oregon actually did this one first, but the rollout was kind of confusing. On March 20th, Governor Brown and Mayor Wheeler urged people to stay inside. But it wasn't really clear whether that was an order or not, so some people just didn't listen and actually hit the beach. So, that Monday morning, the governor finally issued a stay-at-home order, and that afternoon, Governor Inslee followed her lead and did the same thing in Washington. Then, just this week, Governor Inslee shut down Washington schools for the rest of the year, which brings us to today. And it was Oregon's turn to follow again by closing all schools in Oregon for the rest of the school year. And that's how we got here.
Okay, let's talk about masks. The CDC wants you to wear them in public from now on to stop the spread of coronavirus from you to other people. But there's been some confusion about if it works the other way around, if it also protects you from getting the coronavirus. David tweeted at me and said, "Hey, Dan, I don't understand why masks only help from spreading COVID-19. Going in or out, breath still passes through the same filters. Can someone please explain the difference?" So, unfortunately, there's no real black or white answer to this, but basically experts say that masks can provide protection both ways. But a lot of it depends on if they fit properly and some other sciencey stuff like the size of droplets coming out of your mouth.
So they protect you pretty good from large droplets. If you have a mask that fits well and is made of the right material, the right thick cloth material that tends to be a little bit more fibrous, and it fits well, you might get as much as 50% effective reduction in exposure to even small droplets, but that is just the right conditions where it fits well.
All right, and he says a lot of homemade masks just don't fit well. They got openings near the nose, and that can let air in. But he does say if you are wearing a mask and you cough, it can capture a lot of those particles and stop them from spreading around the room. Now, the CDC has been pretty clear about this, that people with COVID-19 don't always have symptoms. That's why they want everyone to wear a mask in public, because you might have the virus and not know it. Either way, remember this, masks aren't the best defense. They're just kind of one part of our armor against this. Our best weapons are social distancing and washing your hands. Now, speaking of masks, this story in the LA Times kind of caught our eye. Hospitals say the federal government is seizing shipments of medical supplies intended for them, apparently so that they can be redistributed around the country to places that need them most. Now, Peace Health is one of the hospital systems that recently had a shipment of testing supplies taken from them. They have 10 hospitals across the Northwest, including Vancouver and Eugene. They told us their shipment was diverted to the East Coast. Now, a lot of these hospital systems say that they're already overwhelmed and that this really is kind of adding insult to their injury, because right now everyone needs as many supplies as they can get. But that's going to bring us now to our quote of the day from the Chief Operating Officer of Peace Health. "It's incredibly frustrating," he says. Those are the words from Richard DiCarlo, told to the LA Times about the feds seizing their shipment. He also says that they had to come up with a whole new plan for testing patients when that happened. So why exactly is the federal government doing this? Well, FEMA says that they have a system right now to distribute the supplies based on how many people live in certain cities and states and how bad the outbreaks are in certain areas. But they didn't really explain why they're seizing supplies from some hospitals and not others, or why hospitals like Peace Health seem to be caught off guard.
Governor Brown may free some inmates to slow the spread of COVID-19 behind bars. And why are hundreds of prisoners finding out that their sentences actually got longer? Quarantine donuts, social distance drinking. It's news about vices. It's Vice News when the story continues.
Time for another viewer question. This person says, hey Dan, we have heard in the news that people are turned away from testing. Are we counting the number of cases that are exhibiting symptoms but not being tested? Why are they being turned away? Thank you, Lindsay Hardison, for that question. So as long as testing materials are limited, we have to prioritize who gets tested and who does not. Right now, it's healthcare workers, then people with symptoms or caring for people with symptoms. We need test results for everyone if we are ever able to understand how best to respond to the outbreak or how to plan for society's recovery. So people are not being turned away because they should not be tested. They're being turned away because we have to prioritize those who are most likely to be infected so we can get them into isolation. Please keep sending in those questions using the hashtag HeyDan. Another viewer question is a common one. This person says, hey Dan, should we still be cleaning mail? Thank you, Jean, for that question. Yes, you do want to wipe down packages and mail every time and wash your hands after opening or handling either of those things. Please keep sending in your questions using the hashtag HeyDan.
All right, here's something that we think is worth your time. And shout out to the Oregonian, Oregon Live on this one. They dug up a memo from Washington County that's giving us kind of an idea how Governor Kate Brown plans to use her clemency powers to try and make prisons safer during this pandemic. Now, the memo says that she's asking for details on which inmates the state could safely release based on things like their crimes, what's left on their sentences, and so on. She's also gathering some info on inmates' ages and how many are medically high risk. She is getting some pushback here. The Oregon District Attorneys Association said in a statement, doing this discounts the safety and security of victims who trusted in a sentence handed down by the court. Now, the point of letting inmates out early is to bring down the prison population enough so that the people still inside can maintain a proper social distance from one another. But nobody is walking free just yet. As a matter of fact, Maggie Vespa learned hundreds of inmates are being told their release dates have been pushed back, keeping them in prison longer.
You know, I worked super freaking hard for that.
Christina Cobb called me from Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, Oregon's only women's prison, and the same one where KGW spent a year profiling Mercy Corps Northwest's LIFE program. Cobb is there on 2 counts of robbery. She participated in a different program called Turning Point. It's focused on addiction recovery, and those who complete it typically qualify for an early release date. For months, Cobb's has been set for May 18th. Then came the pandemic.
And I was 4 months into the 6-month program when they came and pulled the plug on us.
Officials say they pulled the plug because they had to. The Department of Corrections banned visitors, including volunteers and instructors, to try and keep COVID-19 out of Oregon's prisons. Cobb has no problem with that, but because she's unable to finish that program, her release date has been rescheduled. It's now set for the end of August. She'll miss her son's 16th birthday.
You know, when you've been in there and you're really working hard, and I was so close I could taste it.
Her story comes amid calls for Governor Kate Brown to grant inmates clemency and bring the prison population down. Cobb sees this delay of release dates as ironic.
There's a lot of us in this position.
So KGW took that comment to the Department of Corrections and to Governor Brown's office to ask how many inmates are in Cobb's position where they signed up for Turning Point or for a similar program, which was then canceled, pushing their release date back. The answer? 217 inmates at 3 different prisons: Columbia River Correctional Institute, Powder River Correctional Facility, and Coffee Creek Correctional Facility.
This is a problem.
Babin Singh runs the Oregon Justice Resource Center. This week, they, on behalf of a group of inmates, sued Governor Brown and the Department of Corrections for not doing enough to keep COVID-19 out of prisons. He called this delay in release dates extremely unfortunate.
I mean, these are impacting people's lives. They're being put in a situation that is vulnerable.
Singh adds he believes the DOC is working to fix this and let people out earlier as planned. So we took that point to the Department of Corrections too, and a spokesperson actually told us that they want to get the instructors back into the prisons for these programs as soon as possible, but until they do, these delayed release dates stand because inmates haven't completed the programs. It's worth noting 5 DOC staff members and 3 inmates have tested positive at this point for COVID-19 in Oregon. Dan?
All right, Maggie, thank you. So, okay, let's take a minute and talk about some of our vices. You know, drugs, alcohol, sugar. Yeah, that's one of them. It's time for another installment of Vice News. Let's start talking about booze first, because we're apparently drinking a lot more of it while in lockdown. The OLCC says that they saw a more than 17% increase in alcohol sales in the last month compared to March of 2019. And it's not just alcohol. Oregonians bought more than $84 million worth of weed, flour, in March, the largest amount ever sold in 1 month. Dispensaries brought in about 30% more cash last month compared to March of last year. Remember, pot shops are allowed to stay open right now. They're just having to do things like curbside pickup. Some of Portland's popular donut shops, yeah, those are vices for some people, are going through an evolution of sorts after taking a big hit in the past few weeks. In some cases, donuts are on the back burner, you could say, as they sell other products to try and stay in business. Keely Chalmers takes a look.
Portland is known for a lot of things. Donuts is certainly one of them.
Donuts are a huge deal in Portland.
Which is why Nate Snell and his wife Jamie opened Pip's Original Donuts and Chai.
We started Valentine's Day of 2013. It was a labor of love. Thank you so much. Hey, how are you?
But these days you won't find any donuts inside the donut shop. What you will find is rows of bags full of chai.
The donuts are taking a little bit of a backseat right now, and the chai is stepping forward, and it's ruling the day.
When the governor mandated restaurants shut down their dining rooms to customers, Pip's got to work on revamping its business model.
And we pivoted and said, you know, our chai is world famous. Let's bottle it up and sell it and see if anybody's interested. And we sold out within minutes. It's called community chai.
That's right, the donut fryers might be cold, but Pip's stoves are still hot, brewing up batches of ultra-concentrated chai.
It's like the Popeyes chicken sandwich of the Portland beverage industry right now.
Tried to get it on Saturday and they sold out, so I was lucky enough to get some this time. And I got my favorite, which I'm super excited about. It's really, really good.
It's a donut evolution unfolding across the city, one that started with perhaps Portland's most famous donut joint.
And while their typical long line of customers is no longer here, the Voodoo Donuts here in Old Town is still open for business. It's just takeout and pickup of online orders only.
Blue Star Donuts is also changing up its game. For the first time, the gourmet pastry shop will be selling a line of limited edition donuts in grocery stores around the metro area. For Snell, it's not just about business, it's about giving back. He's actually donating 10% of his community chai profits to other struggling restaurants.
So this one right now is going to the restaurant Mata.
Because when it comes to the food industry, he knows it will take a community to save it.
There you go. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Keely Chalmers, KGW News.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Safino, and in today's weather story, we are going to talk about pollution, or more specifically, the lack thereof. Check out this picture of the skies over Los Angeles. They've never looked better. Granted, it's a good weather pattern for clean sky over Los Angeles. They're getting a lot of rain showers down there, but the point is this. We're seeing lower pollution levels in Portland, as we saw in Catherine Cook's story earlier today, around the United States, and in fact, all around the world. The problem is it's not really sustainable, because once we go back to business as usual, it can ramp up, and it can ramp up in a really dirty way. More about that, but there is a benefit to this. It is a preview of the benefit of drastic action, because this whole thing, COVID and all the shutdowns surrounding it, have been absolutely drastic, and the shutdown of the polluters and the things that we do that pollute have been dramatic, and we're seeing that in our clean skies. In fact, this is a imagery over Europe from the European Space Agency of nitrogen dioxide and the decrease in over Italy as they experienced their big lockdown and shutdown. Now, China produced 25% less carbon during their lockdown, but already that's beginning to come back, and they are the world's biggest polluter. The problem is, as I said earlier, it's not necessarily sustainable. After the 2008 financial crisis and recession, China saw its biggest, dirtiest stimulus package ever that just led to more pollution and more carbon going into the atmosphere. So the way to do this, at least according to the European Union countries, is to have an intelligent recovery and to strengthen environmental regulations and not relax them, which is what's happening right now as we are seeing a relaxation of enforcement of pollution regulations in this country. The plastics industry, one example there, they've been kind of on their heels a bit because of all the pollution, plastic pollution in the ocean. Well, now that reusable bags aren't being really allowed in many locations, the plastics are coming back as we're using more disposable items like that to go and do our shopping like that. So again, the goal must be for production and consumption to change and our habits to change over a long period, but this is a great example as to what drastic action can do to help curb not only pollution but global warming. Dan?
Thanks, Matt. I often think about how this situation will change the world and the way that everybody acts, and it's interesting to hear that world leaders are thinking about that right now as well. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. So if you've been watching the story for a couple of days now, then you've been paying pretty close attention to what we have been paying close attention to, and that is this moment that tigers are having. The whole country can't stop talking about them or Googling about them or watching Netflix documentaries about them. Joe Exotic's in quarantine, by the way. And as we told you yesterday about the Vancouver band's connection to the Tiger King. Not to mention poor Nadia, the tiger that tested positive for COVID-19 at the Bronx Zoo. I thought that our tiger coverage was over, but I was wrong. I didn't want to have to do this, but apparently we have a new segment.
Tiger Beat!
Hey everyone, Kristen Severance here, investigative reporter turned tiger correspondent for The Story. I'm just kidding, but we have been getting a lot of tiger questions like this one. This person says, hey Dan, please will you tell everyone the reason that tigers at the Bronx Zoo became infected with COVID-19 is that tigers are genetically similar to humans. Check out this and report it. Newsweek got it right, but no one else has clarified this significant point. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, for that question. Well, you know what? We checked with the experts on this, and basically the receptors that allow the virus to invade our bodies are similar in humans and tigers. But that's about it. That's where the similarities really end. By the way, the tiger and the 6 other big cats in the Bronx Zoo who got COVID-19 are expected to recover. And the important part here, experts still don't think this will be a widespread issue in our pets. Please keep sending in those questions, tiger-related or not, using the hashtag HeyDan.
All right, keeping Portland weird. One of Grandma's Easter gifts for the grandkids. This is Marie Jameson. She's making a papier-mâché COVID-19 virus, and she's going to fill it up with Easter candy, leave it on her grandkids' front porch so that they can take part in a rousing game of Bash the Virus. I love this idea. I think that, how creative. I'm totally on board. Leave it to Grandma to prove that you can still have some fun while social distancing. If you are out there keeping Portland weird, prove it. Email us or use the hashtag HeyDan. A couple of comments we want to get to tonight. Debbie writing in and saying, one silver lining to this whole coronavirus thing is that robocalls are nearly extinct. In the last 3 weeks, I've been confined to my house. I've only received about 7 or 8, which sounds like a downtick for her. I'd like to get some data on that. You're not the first person I've heard say that. That's pretty interesting. And then someone else writing in and saying, I made that little speech off the top about having heartfelt feelings for all the seniors out there, the high school seniors who don't get to partake in the typical end-of-year festivities that they usually have now that there is no formal class happening anymore. And she said, well, what about college seniors? You're welcome to the real world. No, college seniors too, That stinks. You know, it stinks for all of us. It really does. But I think the point, what I said off the top, is something we should all live by, and that I know we're all living by, which is let's try to make the best of what we have, what we can do right now by being there for each other and feeling the best we can for each other. All right, that's it. That's the story for tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow.